Hey, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New I'm still my screen still says preview mode, but it's okay. It'll kick in. I'm
Happy
sure.
astrological New Year. Happy Aries season. Welcome, everybody. I got my Aries trucker hat on, so I'm representing, and I'm here with fellow Aries, Vivi.
It's funny when we decided to do I mind.
Lost you there for a second, Viv.
Oh, am I here? Am I here again?
Yeah, yeah, you're there now.
Okay. This call is brought to you courtesy of Spectrum, the worst internet provider known to man. I'm at home. This is embarrassing.
I can attest to that, man. I had them once upon a time. I wasn't always very happy with it.
Yeah.
But you were saying something about when we decided to do this talk.
Oh, yeah, like, you're like, What topic?" And I was like, "Well, it's Aries season, like, a lot happening, let's talk
Yeah.
about that," but I totally failed to think about the fact that we are both native Sun in Aries. Didn't think about that, so here we go.
Who better? We've been living it our whole lives.
Ugh, I know, and, yeah, w where do you wanna start? I feel like we had some really good, like, intro conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see, like, who else how many Aries do we have in the room? That'd be kinda cool. It's freaking crazy, like, when I started an astrology group in Asheville, we had 12 members, founding members.
Okay.
How many people would you guess had Virgo moons out of 12?
Now, that's very like, you're setting me up for something here. I don't know, like
Well,
4.
statistically, that's pretty close. It was 5.
Yeah.
Statistically, it should be 1 in 12, right?
I mean,
But
statistically, yeah. Could don't know, like,
you
the
know,
people who
birds
would
of a
take
feather, as they say.
You still in Asheville?
No, I left Asheville I was in the Asheville area, which
Okay.
is several counties, for about 20
Yeah.
years, and I just got priced out of that market after COVID. Everybody who didn't wasn't tethered to a physical location for work anymore, they just started flocking to Asheville and the prices went through the roof, and so I'm back in Virginia now.
Yeah, okay. How
Yeah.
far away is that?
It's about 3 hours. I'm about 3 hours northwest. I'm still on the Blue Ridge Parkway, still in the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is where I'm from, but I'm just a little
Okay.
bit over the border where the prices are a lot more reasonable, and, yeah, but yeah, it's interesting how, like, certain signs, the other thing is, like, the birds of a feather theme, how they just show up, like,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
than what you would expect, right? The other thing is, like, I'm not just an Aries, I've got, like, depending on what you count a planet, I've got Chiron, Mercury, Venus all in the first decan.
Yeah.
Then I have Saturn and the North Node in the second decan, and the Sun and Eris in the third decan. So, um, a lot of my astrology career has been watching these big stelliums show up in my consulting practice in all the signs, dude. But that theme of like people having a super concentrated amount of energy in one sign is something that has followed me around my whole career. It's kind of wild.
Okay, that's interesting. So, a lot of clients who have that sort of not necessarily an Aries, but they just have a stellium in an area of life, obviously there to help them, I don't know, understand that energy.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And that's the other thing that I try to impart to my students is that to remember that people come to them for them,
Yeah.
and they shouldn't try to tell their clients what Gary P Caton would say about, yeah, sometimes it's good to remember what your mentors taught you, but fundamentally, your vibration, your consciousness, your essence is what draws the people to you. And so, that you should be honor that. Um, and so, yeah. Um, yeah, Liz is saying she's got there she is, there's my Capricorn stellium, the strong cardinal energy. We got the Asheville peeps here. Awesome. Krista's here. Krista is the student of my best bud in Asheville for a long
Okay.
time, Kelly Lee Phipps. So,
Oh, I wait, is Krista who's Krista? Is it
um,
Krista
practical
Practical? That's Chris
practical
Practical
Astro.
Astros. Oh
Yeah.
my good. I had a feeling. That's so cool. So you guys knew each other in real life?
Well, a little bit. We actually got to know each other more after I was away from Asheville, which is crazy because there's been several people that was like that. It's after I left Asheville that I got to know them. I know,
Oh.
it's crazy. Um, but yeah, one of the things as far as, like, where to start with the Aries thing, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, this idea that people forget with Aries, which is that it's an equinox sign.
Mhm.
So there's equal amount of day and night, just like Libra. It's every bit as
Mhm.
balanced as Libra, actually,
Yeah.
except it's coming out of the dark and shooting into the light, whereas Libra is coming out of the light and descending into the dark. So it's very different directionally. Um, but that idea, like one of the most amazing, um, one of the first people that really helped me understand Aries as an Aries was Dane Rudhyar.
Mm.
In this book, it's called The Pulse of Life. And Rudhyar wrote a lot of stuff, and a lot of it is dense and hard. It's difficult, especially for a beginner. I got exposed to that and early on, and I was like, "Oh my god, what in the," like, "How will I ever figure this out?" But that is actually the Pulse of Life should be the beginner Rudhyar. Like, I wish there was some way to tell people, like, if you're gonna read Rudhyar, like, start with the lunation cycle or the Pulse of Life, because he talks about the fundamental forces of astrology being like what he calls the day force and the night force, you know? And, it's kinda like the first 2 hexagrams in the yin yang in the I Ching, right?
Yeah.
The force and field, like, yeah, masculine and feminine. And, he talks about the fact that in Aries, they are balanced, but that the light is struggling to overcome the darkness. So
Mhm.
there's almost a neurotic, what's weird about that, like, Virgo gets the label of neurotic a lot, and they kinda deserve it. We kinda deserve it. I'm with y'all. I'm Virgo moon, but Aries and Virgo mirror each other across the solstice. They are antitia to one another. So it's interesting when he actually used that word neurotic to describe Aries. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting because typically speaking, it's kind of veiled behind a lot of bravado and whatever else. And so it's not as obvious as with Virgos. But that idea that there's this headlong rush, the classic saying is like a bat out of hell, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, I'm out of here, yo. Like, I'm going somewhere, and that primal urge to overcome and to establish oneself as an actual being, as an actual personality. That's the way Rudyard describes Aries, and I think it's really, really helpful because you don't get a lot of that, people, a lot of the keywords are like warrior and, whatever. Yes, warrior, but, you know, um, one of the first things that I was always drawn to, I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'll fight if I'm cornered, but I'm not really a fighter actually, unless I have to. But an explorer, like a pioneering energy, heck yeah, like, I've been doing that my whole life, and I was always drawn to those cats, like, that's especially the first decan of Aries,
Mhm.
you know, that that's another person, Austin Coppock's book on the decans, the 36 Faces, that first decan, his description of that as, like, this axe wielding person that's chopping out a clearing in the forest of the collective consciousness for their, to build a cabin in the forest of being. I was like, "Oh my god, that's like the first time anybody." I literally dreamed about being like Daniel Boone and Simon Kenton and all those cats that
Wow.
did that shit, and I was like, "Holy shit, somebody actually gets it, man."
I
You're a first decan, Aries.
yeah. I think I can relate, and I can add to that. Um, it's funny, it's interesting as you start to realize your chart talks starts to talk from all these different perspectives. So there's something very fixed in my chart, but then I also have the sun at 0 degrees Aries in this place that wants to go. And I've always had these moments of my life, especially when I was younger, where I was remember being in college and I would be like, I'm trying really hard. I'm gonna like stay put and build something. And then I would just be on my car. I'm like, I could just leave town. Like, I was always sort of like, it took me forever to graduate because I'd be like, let's just go on the road. Like, I'm gonna just go out there and see what's out there.
That impulse to just get going. Yeah,
Exactly. And
yeah.
I also think, and I love your thoughts, and I can't remember. I mean, many astrologers have said this, so I can't exactly quote who, but there's that sort of Aries intuition, you just know, and, I had a client, and he was a really successful I mean, god, he was successful at so many things, but among things, he was a trader, and he used to say what he called his friends would call his Aries leapfrog, right? He had sort of Aries stellium, and he would just know, and it's like that action before you can rationalize, and maybe that's the difference between Virgo neurosis is Aries are like the impulse to go before you can explain.
100%. Yeah, I remember when I first started learning that about myself, high school physics, my freshman, football coach was the teacher, and he was like this really Saturnian dude, and he would want, to, take all the steps, like, and he would put, like, one of these proofs, and I would know the answer, dude, I just knew, and I would just say that and he would go, "Yes, intuitively, you know that, but you must do this stuff, ah," and he would get so pissed, and I was just like, "What, man? I know the answer. Why do I gotta do all that crap?"
Oh my god, you have Saturn in Aries. Was he your Saturn speaking to you? Was he just
Oh my
was
god,
that your
dude.
training?
Oh my god. I mean, that guy was and the other thing is, like, the warrior thing, I remember vividly, we were playing our rivals, our cross county rivals,
Yeah.
and this dude was holding me and cheating basically, and I was struggling to get pat and I came over to the side, "What the hell is going on out there?" And I said, "The guy's holding me, man." He's like, "Show me how he's doing it." So I showed him and he's like, "Okay, here's what you do. The next time he does that," and he goes, wham, right in my gut. I was like, "Dude," I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yes. He's cheating, cheat back." It was the first time in my life anybody gave me the go ahead to just play dirty, you know? And I was like, "Okay, let's go." I nailed that son of But that's Saturn too. It's not always about, being, like, structured and disciplined, it's like knowing when the time to be malefic, dude.
Uh-huh. It's funny. I think it's Austin who's always saying, like, especially like, speaking of Saturn, like, it knows when to follow the rules and break the rules, and I think I had some idea of what that means, but now I really know what that means. Like, survival, like, at
Exactly.
all
Yeah.
costs.
Yeah, if playing by the rules is, getting you in trouble, then you have no choice. You gotta learn how to bend and or break the rules, you know? So that and those survival instincts with Aries, you mentioned, like, just wanting to get out and get on the road. I mean, I did that. I took off from college myself, and so it took me, like, until my 30s to finish my bachelor's degree
Yeah.
because of all the wandering that I did in the meantime, but it was still I consider it the best thing I ever did for myself because I learned how to live on the streets. I learned how to survive by the seat of my pants. And, I think that has to do with, my, like, Aquarius as the kind of the outsider and, and all that. I think, like, every time I hear people talking all this new age stuff about Aquarius, I just wanna say to them, "Dude, go live as a homeless person for a year and then come back and tell me about Aquarius," you know? Um, but yeah, that Aries survival instincts and the just knowing, um, I think that's something that people could really stand to get in touch with during Aries season, like, just following an impulse and seeing
Mhm.
where it takes you, and remembering that you have that navigational system. Because look, man, we are the end result of thousands of years of successful humans.
Yeah.
Did just that. They lived by the seat of their pants, and they found a way to make it and to reproduce. So those instincts have been honed over not just millennia, but eons. And so, hey, it's great when you can to be rational and have a plan and all that stuff. But when that stuff goes south, you need to be able to trust your instincts, and it's a precious gift to know that you have those to draw on,
Yeah, if I can share a little bit of a personal
Of
example,
course.
if that's okay. When I think about Aries energy in my own relationship to my own life, right? Um, I had 2 very watery parents, right? Like a Scorpio
Same
sun.
here, Scorpio and Cancer.
Okay, so maybe I'm wondering if you could sort of relate to this. And growing up, it was so just emotionally volatile. Like, they were drinkers, like, all of that, right? Like, as an
Yeah.
adult now, I'm like, I if I, like, encountered you 2, I would be running, like, what okay. So, very sort of volatile, and I look at my son at 0 degrees Aries, right? And I was like, if I was born with a Pisces sun, I'd be dead, right? Like, I was just from a very young age, "Get out of here. These people are crazy," and I got called selfish so often, but it was my self-preservation that literally saved me, and so every time I look at my chart, I think of, like, my little son who just got out of it was just,
Mhm.
"Go, you
That very
crazy
first
watery people."
yes, 100%, man. I mean, I don't know why, but for some reason, I'm reminded of Terrence McKenna when you say that, where he talks about, like, th th things are gonna get increasingly weirder, like, his whole thing was that weirdness or what he called, what was the word that he used? I'm trying to think of the particular word, but that, that things are just gonna constantly be novelty, that novelty is just always increasing, and that when a species is ready to depart for the stars, it doesn't do so under orderly conditions. It's a fire in a madhouse, he said. And I'm just thinking like, there you are in the fire. It's a fire in a madhouse, and I'm freaking out of here, yo. And that impulse, yeah, and that impulse, like if there's a fire or if you know, there's a calmness that comes with that trust of your instinctual self.
Yeah.
There's a calmness where you're like, "Oh, yeah. Oh, this is an emergency. Okay, better get going." Whereas some people will just be like, they're stuck because they don't have any experience in trusting that instinctual impulse. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And
Absolutely. I've met people, it's funny. Like, and I also realize, and I'm curious about you too, and you have Saturn there, so maybe it's a little different, but, like, having to come to terms of, like, also what is a trauma response and what is real, and, God, I think the most frustrating thing for me is to be in a situation where I know I need to leave and I'm with someone who's trying to talk me through it, and I'm like, "There's no time to talk. We don't talk."
oh my god, yes. Yeah, this is not a thinking thing, this is not a talking thing, this is a going thing. Like, let's just go. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it there's I look, I benefited from talk therapy,
Yeah.
to a degree. I mean, I remember I'll never forget, um, I lost a loved one way before their time, and somebody, got me to go to counseling and stuff, and I remember the first the first therapist I had, we were talking about the process and whatever, and I was like, "Alright, so just so you know, you're not gonna get me to cry, and so, like, you can scratch that shit off your list with a straight face, yo." I just
Yeah.
told her, "Yeah, like, that crying bullshit, like, okay, we can do this, we can do that." And she looked at me, and I think she was trying to figure out if I was fucking with her or if I was serious,
Yeah.
and she's like, "But that's supposed to be the breakthrough moment." She was literally she was genuinely, like, upset, that I that's, like, kind of the goal, and I was like, "Yeah, no, not gonna happen, man."
Did it work? Did you stick with her?
Um, she was great. She thought on her feet, and she got me the hell out of the office, and we took walks. We did walking counseling, and that worked. But at some point, dude, I used to tell her what I went through, and she would be ready to cry. I could see it. And I'm just like, "Yeah, like, that's just my daily reality." Yeah, like, and so I think at some point she ended up referring me to someone a little tougher because she was like, I think she didn't realize what she got into with me. The one male therapist that I've had, he's like,
Yeah.
"You're a hard nut to crack." And I was like, "Yeah, yes, that's."
Although it is awkward. I've had those moments when you're telling someone a story and you're just you're fine with it. You're like, "I've lived through this, I've done it." And then they start getting emotional and you're like, "Do I this is so awkward. Am I supposed to comfort you now?"
Yeah, right. You're comforting them about your trauma,
Uh-huh.
right? I was
You're like,
like,
"It's okay,
"Oh,
I'm here."
yeah, oh boy, this is working so well."
Um,
But
I
yeah,
want go
sometimes
on.
talking just isn't gonna cut it, man. It's a doing thing. It's a like, something needs to be done, and that's the other thing about, like, Aries emotions, like, they're immediate, And so trying to tell me to calm down when I'm fucking pissed, that's just gonna piss me off more. Like, I need to, like, shout, or back in the day, man, I would be like, I need to break something or pound my fist, or it was just, "Ah!" And then, "Okay, now you can talk to me, like, but it's gotta come out, yo. Trying to tell me to calm down at that point in time is ridiculous. It's not gonna help."
Oh, yeah, I mean, you can't bottle anger, right? Like, that's the whole I mean, you were a therapist, I mean, if you do that that's what turns into sort of long-term, right,
Exactly.
grief, depression, et cetera.
Yeah, and that's basically the reverse of the Aries impulse, Um, it's really, I mean, I can't remember. I think Freud was a Taurus, so it makes sense, the pleasure principle and all that stuff. But, you know, he when he was faced with the horrors of World War I, he had to come up with a different idea of, like, he thought everything was based off of pleasure and people were seeking pleasure and this and that. You can all explain it off of pleasure seeking. But saw World War I. He's like, this is not fucking pleasure, man. This is not, what is it? And he came up with Thanatos, the death instinct, you know?
Mm,
And that that when that Aries impulse gets turned back inwards, I think it becomes kind of like Thanatos. It kind of becomes the revert. If it's life just pouring forth,
yeah,
then life being pushed back in. In mythology, there's an interesting parallel, like when Oranos was fathering all these children with Gaia, and he was like, "Ow, these kids are ugly, like, put them back."
that was a quote.
The bitch is ugly, put it back." And she's like, "But they're my babies, I love them all," you know? I can imagine this conversation, but that's the same kind of thing that, and that's actually different. So that's actually different. It's funny, we were talking about Saturn a little bit in the preview, and so because Saturn is now in Aries too
Yeah.
for the next little while, so that kind of trying to put the genie back in the bottle, trying to put the
Mhm.
anger back or whatever it is, that's life denying. That's gonna, yeah, result in problems every single time. And of course, that was what happened with with the war between the Titans, um, and, the or no, the Titanomachy was the war with the Olympians, but the original war between Saturn and his father
Yeah.
was bloody. This bloody war was a result of him trying to stop the natural process of things going forth. Um, but this idea of Saturn being a baby eater, I've thought about that quite a bit. And, if you think about it in terms of Kabbalah,
Yeah.
are you familiar with Kabbalah at all?
Not so much. So I'm gonna
So
let you explain this.
Kabbalah is basically just, well, originally it was like Jewish mysticism, right?
Yes.
So Kabbalah with a K is the original, and it's explicitly tied to the planets. The Sephirot are explicitly tied to the planets in the Sefer Yetzirah, the original Jewish mysticism book. Um, so it's kind of like if you think about the planetary spheres,
Yes.
like the celestial spheres. So you have the 4 elements in the sublunary sphere, and then you have Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, right? That's Kabbalah. Those are the first 7 spheres, and then you have the sphere of the fixed stars, um, and then you have the monad, essentially. So there's your 10 Sephirot of the Kabbalah. And so in the what's called the supernal triangle, which is at the top of the tree, you have
Mhm.
Saturn, the fixed stars, and the monad. So and that triangle faces upwards, whereas and the next one does too, and it's only the lowest triangle with Mercury, Moon, and Venus that points down.
Mm.
So, and what's interesting about that is Saturn went to war with his father, Jupiter went to war with his father, but Mercury's located in this lower triangle hanging out with the goddesses. He just said, "Hey, Pops, I want in on the poker game. Like, I'm willing to give you your due. Just deal me in, Pops," you know? And there was no bloody war or anything. And so to get back to this idea of Saturn for a minute, though, because Saturn is in the supernal triangle, think of it
Yeah.
as like the archetypal realm. Saturn swallowing his babies is a metaphor for the eternal, uncreated, the archetypes sort of um, kind of turning back on themselves in this process rather than concretizing and being. They're just like in this unchanging, relatively unchanging. So as soon as something is sort of manifestable, it
Yeah.
becomes manifest. It's like this eternal loop of manifest and unmanifest, and you have to like pierce that somehow to bring it down. And so this war between Jupiter and Saturn was like literally like a war between the unmanifest and bringing that down. But even Zeus was located on like this remote mountaintop. But of course, he was called Zeus
Mm.
Aitabates, which means the one who descends. So he came down from the mountain and took all these lovers. So he had like this earthly aspect, right? Um, and so you're kind of seeing a map for the way that the unmanifest becomes manifest. So this idea of Saturn eating babies, I don't think it's like the death instinct so much. It's not. it's not about Saturn, like, literally being a cannibal or being, just it was his father that denied, the babies that and stuff, but it has I think it has more to do with, like, the that realm being, like, this really high supernal realm where things are not, um, descending of their own accord. They kind of just are in this barely manifest, barely able to be perceived even, you know?
Yeah, I think okay, and this maybe sounds, um I hope this makes sense. He wasn't really like, I mean, you see the depictions of him eating babies, but I mean, in the mythology, if I'm understanding correctly, he was swallowing
Yes,
them,
he was
which is
swallowing them.
different, right? Like, if you're swallowing something, it's contained, it's whole. As you said, it's not manifest, but it's a lot different than actually eating a baby.
That's true.
If we're
Good point, Viv. Yeah, like, he's not masticating, yeah, he's not chewing, he's just swallowing. You froze up a little bit there for a second, dear. I'm just checking the comments here to see. Uh-oh, lost Vivi. Doggone it. That happened with last time when that happened with Sylvia, I wasn't able to get her back in, folks, so that may not be good news. Doggone it, because I really enjoyed speaking to both those ladies, but for some reason, we're having technical difficulties here. Um, so Julia's asking, would Saturn in Aries, is it the energy of mastery being put out into the world? Yeah, 100% Saturn is about mastery, and because Saturn is located in the top of the Kabbalah, it's like imagine like it's literally like that Capricorn goat. It's like this, "Oh, there she is. You were able to get back in. Dude, high five.
thank you. I'm
Fantastic."
calling Spectrum right after.
Sylvia wasn't able to get back in, and I ended up having to trash the live stream for some but you made it. That's awesome.
I made it. I'm so that's such a bummer that, and it's a recording still? Yeah,
I
okay.
think so. Yeah,
Uh,
it's all good.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's such a,
It was just a
um
brief you had a brief, something.
I had to switch actually the internet provider. Anyway, we left off or I was talking about, Saturn swallowing, not chewing, the big differences there. Um, but, maybe this is interesting. Like, do you think that, like, maybe and maybe I'm, like, maybe I'm sorry, trying to bring things together that don't necessarily go together, but that, like, difficulty in, like, exerting oneself, right? Or that if we think about, right, Saturn's, desire to swallow things, right? Is that maybe archetypally why we get Saturn associated with delays, right? Things that take a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, because archetypally, it's like the opposite. Saturn is exalted in Libra,
Mhm.
right? The sun is exalted in Aries. So there's so yeah, Saturn wants to swallow it almost in a and Saturn, the planet, is
Yeah.
like the big daddy of the solar system, dude. He's spawning moons out of the rings all the time. It's incredible. So there's literally like and in some and the Sephiroth that Saturn occupies in the
Yeah.
Kabbalah is basically like a feminine, um, energy also. So there's a feminine aspect to Saturn in that it's almost as if he's gestating the things that he's
Mhm.
swallowing. He's swallowing them to basically to keep them from being this headstrong Aries that sort of that gets ahead of itself and gets into trouble and said, "No, no, no, like, I'm gonna keep you safe for a while until you grow strong enough and capable enough and are ready to actually." Now, that said, it did take, you know, Rhea tricking him and then Jupiter punching him in the gut to disgorge his brothers. So, I don't wanna get, like, too much, like, Saturn apologist here. necessarily, but assuming we don't take that stuff perfectly literally,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're right. I think the swallowing is a metaphor for containment, that that sometimes that Aries impulse to just go,
Mhm.
it's absolutely the right impulse in terms of, like you said, sometimes it's just time to get the fuck out and then talk about it later after you're out, after you say whatever, right? Um, but then not every impulse is gonna be one that you keep going with. Like, you know, some impulses you're gonna I need to realize, "Wow, this Aries impulse, I went with it, and and it took me a place, and I realized there is so much more there that I actually need to find a container for this impulse to sort of keep it nurtured over the long term. This is not one of those quick hitters where I'm just gonna follow this thing and it's gonna be its own thing and then it's done and I can go on to the next impulse. This is something that's actually gonna take some time and a good container to hold it.
I imagine almost, the visual that was coming to me was thinking about the Aries impulse as if you light a piece of paper on fire, right? It feels really satisfying when it's burning, but you're left with ash, and that's fine, um,
Reminds
if
me of that woman that was lighting her cigarette with the picture of the dictator, on fire, like yeah. Yeah,
oh,
it's a good image.
yeah, and, it's interesting because like, I think the Saturn's kind of like, okay, like, you if you just that quick impulse is going to leave you, again, in this sort of with nothing, and so, at that point, there's, like, the things that we want to build, and that's a different process, right? Like, our impulse can do us some good, but we'll end up just in a pile of ash if we're always following that impulse.
100%, yeah, and that's where Saturn, as difficult as it may be, can be a really great thing for Aries to learn to trust.
Yeah.
Because, like, for instance, the thing I was talking about was, like, the Iranian situation where, the people were protesting against a repressive government that's, you know, oppressive to women and oppressive to everyone, really, as
Yeah,
far as I can tell, but not that I'm an expert on it, but there was a woman that was lighting her cigarette with a picture of the dictator that was burning, the dictator that's now dead.
yeah.
That impulse to fight back against oppression, that's a valid impulse. But as you say, if it's just that impulse, they got guns, they got government structures, they've got all of this stuff. You gotta be in it for the long haul to sustain that fight. And
Mhm,
if you're not, you're just gonna get slaughtered, you know? And so, yeah, like, be like, the discernment to know, "Hey, like, this initial impulse was good, and it got me, like, out of immediate danger, but now I need to find a safe house to organize my stuff if I'm gonna continue this impulse in any way that's actually gonna amount to anything," you know? And that's where I think the Saturn can actually be, because that's not the natural way for Aries at all. That's why Saturn's said to be in fall in Aries, because Aries doesn't get that really.
mhm.
Their natural proclivity is not like, "Yeah, where am I gonna be 30 years from now?" No. Um, but if you wanna have, a revolution, you probably should be thinking on 30-year timelines, you know? And
Yeah.
so there are certain things where that marriage, as difficult and as contrary as it can be really valuable.
In your own life, as someone who has natally Saturn in Aries, like, how has that played out for you? Was there, especially when you were younger, was there a conversation between structure and impulse, or maybe a negotiation, we could say?
Yeah, I mean, so I was basically a parentified child. I was the one who had to fix the roof when it leaked and get the water out of the basement when it flooded and all this kind of stuff. And so, and I mean, I was working in the fields. I was a field hand before I was ever in school, so, and that's classic Saturn, like agriculture.
Yeah.
So, Um, so that Aries impulse got kind of I got swallowed by Saturn basically. And then when I got free of that when I was 18, I was out of there and I found myself in university and that there was something about that Saturnian structure that just didn't I knew, it's the Aries knowing. I just knew like this is not the place for me. I was in an engineering school, number 1, and I'm like more of a I'm more skilled in language and, and stuff, and so, eh, like, it just wasn't working, and so that impulse to just get the hell out of there took over, and so I kinda spent my 20s, like, kind of reparenting my inner child, if you
Mhm.
will, to allow it to be impulsive and to follow its inst and learn to trust all that, and so it wasn't really until my Saturn return that I came around to, like, have a healthy relationship with Saturn and be like, "Okay, maybe this idea of, like, mainstream society of, like, getting married, buying a house and all that, maybe that's not such a bad idea actually, because 'cause I'm kinda tired of, um, in terms of one of the things that I wanna ask you before we're done, by the way,
Yeah.
um I don't know, like an Aries Rushmore or like some of your favorite Aries or something. I just thought that would be kind of fun because I tend to be like overly serious, as you can tell.
Yeah.
So, but one of the people on my Aries Rushmore is Abraham Maslow because he was born 60 years before me, and 60 years, as I'm sure you know, is a Jupiter Saturn cycle.
Yeah.
Um, and it's also like a Chinese zodiac cycle, but if you go back 60 years before you were born, you'll see people who have, like, the same sun sign and the same Jupiter sign and the same Saturn sign.
Oh, okay.
So, Maslow was one of the first people that, um and Maslow, I think unfairly has been somewhat maligned because of postmodern deconstructing blah, 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 blah. I'm not gonna go any further than that, but Maslow's idea that, hey, you can't you can't actualize if you're constantly, repairing the roof and fi from leaking and like, if you're always going back and, like, shoring putting your fingers in the dam, you don't have time to paint. You don't have time to pursue you don't have the time or energy to pursue your higher needs, and so, long story short, that's where I ended up at my Saturn return was like, "Wow, what? Like, being a responsible adult actually sounds pretty cool at this point in time because, like, I don't wanna be a kid forever. I wanna do some real stuff in the world."
Is that when you? Because I know you went to school for therapy. Is that, like
Yeah.
what did that was that, like, the peak of that trajectory, or
Well, no, that was so I w so the Saturn return was I got married and bought a house,
okay.
and, and I was actually building shit at the time. I had a contractor's license, was what I was doing for work.
Yeah.
And work was slow in the winter sometimes, so I went to Home Depot and got, like, a part-time job or whatever, and they tried to get me into management training, and that was a disaster. It was it's just, like, they
Could you
ended
just
up
imagine for a moment, like, what a I mean, what a waste. Like, there would be this other universe where you're just, like, a Home Depot manager and you don't get any of your books, and just this, like, vacuum in the
I'm kind
world.
of embarrassed that I even considered it actually, but now that you say it like that, Viv, but but, yeah, I did consider it, but they ended up, like, passing me by for some other bonehead, and I was just like, "Okay, I'm outta here," and my wife was like, "Hey, why don't you go back to school, dude? Like, you're not
Yeah.
happy, like." And so that's how I ended up in counseling. So I ended up getting my counseling degree, actually, it was 32, it was like the, synodic return of Venus and Mars.
Yeah.
So it was a few years after, um, and that when I went back to, like, the local community college, and I tried to remember, like, this is very alchemical, by the way. This is an, operation. So there's an alchemy when you transform something, first you burn it. Like, I left university, I burned my life to the ground, dude.
Mm.
Like, I would literally all my possessions were gone. I was traveling with a guitar and a blanket at one point, and then my guitar actually got lost in a fire, and I only had the blanket. And, and then so you burn it, and then you wash it, and then you sort through what's left to see what's worth keeping. So I went back through my academic experience and, like, what's worth keeping. I was like, those psych classes that I took for, um, you know, electives or whatever, those were actually pretty freaking interesting of all. Because like, I took some anthropology classes, and this was back when they were still trying to convince people
Mm.
that Homo neanderthalensis and Homo sapiens wasn't really getting it on. I was like, Nah, I ain't buying that shit, bro." Come on. 30,000 years of being neighbors, and they weren't doing the hanky panky. Come on, man. You gotta be kidding me. So, yeah, I went back and I did the counseling thing, and that was actually consciously because I knew it would benefit my astrology. I was doing astrology readings at the time, and I had come up against some obstacles of, like, I was still that guy that was like, "I'm not gonna you can't make me cry?" Like, I was, and so therefore, when people would cry in a reading, I didn't know what the hell to do with that, and I realized, like, I need an answer. That's not right
Mm.
to just have somebody sitting there crying, and I don't know what to do with it. So that was kind of like the impulse for that, and so there was, and I knew that, and again, this was one of those things where I felt that Saturnian of, like, okay, this is an impulse that actually needs a container. So I had to make my peace with the whole, not just like, okay, it's okay to be an adult and like, be a functioning member of society, but maybe I actually need to make my peace with the academic situation in in order to honor this impulse and give it a proper container. Because no offense against, there's some really good programs out there with consulting skills training and everything, but that's pretty limited as far as, like, you know, the training that's possible for being able to deal with people on an emotional and or therapeutic, not therapy, let's
Yeah.
clear about the legal boundaries or whatever, but therapeutic level. And so I honored that particular impulse of, like, man, there's a serious weakness here that I need to shore up, and I'm gonna do it the right way.
I feel like that can we, like, side note that for an
Of
entire
course.
conversation?
Yeah.
Because I have so many questions that I really wanna, dig into with you, especially because knowing that you're a consulting astrologer, so I take it you're as if I'm correct, you're not practicing as a therapist currently, like, on your
No, and I was never a practicing therapist. I was what's called a QMHP. I don't have a master's degree. I left that one too.
okay,
Different reasons, but, yeah, I'm a QMHP in lingo, qualified mental health professional. So I was basically I basically ran the children's services unit for a county in North Carolina. So I was a child counselor and then I was a case manager, and then I was running a children's services unit. That was my mental health career. And so I never was, t what I was qualified to do is what's called supportive counseling,
okay.
where I listen to people and I understand their problems, and then I hook them up with resources and try to, try to help them understand their problem and different ways to approach it better, you know? Um, and that's still a lot of what I do, as an astrologer, is to kind of help give people a better frame to understand what they're going through and kinda help them to build, um, to understand the natural supports that are there,
Yeah.
first of all, and to, like, acknowledge that and to encourage that, but also to give them, ideas about branching out and other ways to support, what they're dealing with. And so, and that's not therapy,
Mhm.
therapy is
Yeah.
is different. Um, but yeah, no, I was never an actual counselor or therapist. But I know how to listen and
Yeah.
I know how to, listen reflectively and I know how to, go deeper with people. And what's crazy, like when I was actually completing that degree, there was this new, trying to get authorization for long-term mental health care is really hard
Yeah.
because they don't want to pay. And so
Mhm.
they're moving towards like short-term interventions. And the idea of a counselor doing short-term interventions, meaning like 5, 7 sessions. Dude, if I have 5 or 7 sessions with a person and I got their chart, we can do a lot of cool stuff. Like,
Mhm.
they are definitely gonna be feeling better and probably living better after that. I can almost guarantee that. There's I'm lucky if I get 2 or 3 with most people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so but the idea of a counselor, like, being limited to 5 or 7 sessions and not having the astrology chart as a shortcut into because, you know, I mean, it's kinda like that Aries knowing,
Mhm.
but, I mean, I pretty much I have to navigate the so one of the things that I was taught, for instance, which is really important, is that you only have the right to confront as much as you first support.
Give me an example.
So so you have to build a supportive relationship with someone where they know you're there for them and they trust you and
Yeah.
before you can say, "Hey, that's kind of fucked up. Like, what the hell are you doing there?" You know?
Yeah.
Because they're not gonna that's not gonna go anywhere if they don't trust you and know that you're doing it from a supportive place, you know? Um, and so if I've only got 1 session with somebody, I'm like there's a part of me somewhere that's like going, "Okay, like, how much trust and support have I built here? And is it time yet to kind of go in there and try to get after some stuff while I've got them here?" And because you kind of only get one shot really in like a 90-minute reading. You got
Yeah.
one shot to kind of, get to kind of do the Plutonian thing and get deep and say, "Hey, I see this, tell me what's going on there." And and yeah, like if and that's the other reason, why I haven't really, done like a sort of a curriculum type school. I prefer to work with people when I'm mentoring just in a one-on-one unstructured way because like any curriculum that I build that's general is like is and I know this from firsthand experience, like it's as likely to obstruct them as it is to the root word of educate means educate, means to bring out.
Mm.
Okay, so if you wanna bring something out of someone, you have to have the space to do that, you know? And so that kind of one-on-one, that container, again, that container of and that's actually I mentioned to you, like, my experiences with therapy. It was the 2nd therapist that was the tougher one that I
Yeah.
got referred to. She confronted me at one point because I was still doing drugs back then, and not that I think there's anything wrong with
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
I'm saying, um, and she didn't want to deal with that while I was working with her, and she confronted me on it, and I was like I genuinely didn't understand, so it wasn't that I was trying, but she was like, "Hey, this is a sacred space, like, I want this to be, and that was actually the way she did that, it was so impressive to me that I was like, "Yeah, okay, I don't need I was just this is the weekend and somebody had some, like, if
Mm.
that important, like, no problem." But
Yeah.
I just didn't understand. Um, but that idea of holding a sacred container for something, like, that's really the the daddy or the mommy, that's the really fecund, nurturing Saturn that's able to hold proper limits and hold a proper space for something um, to grow and blossom in the long term kind of situation, you know?
I think nurturing is such a great Saturn word and something that we don't, as astrologers, use nearly as often as we should.
Yeah, because
Um,
kids need structure as much as they need, food and clothing and emotional support. They need structure, man.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I was thinking about this in a workshop I'm teaching, this sort of well, I'm to go into it, like the differences between Jupiter and Saturn, but thinking about, right, like, I think it's easy to think of Saturn as like discipline and rigor and like religion, things that feel very top down. Cause I think we have like a society that has a little bit of like fear of Saturn. But Saturn, right, is also like what keeps cultures intact, right? It's like you do this, you go to that person, right? Like, oftentimes, yeah, like even cultures that we think of have as so much sort of Venusian influence, things that are beautiful and earthbound. Saturn is so present because if Saturn wasn't present, the whole thing would dissolve.
Pretty
That's how
much.
we lose culture.
Yeah, pretty much anything that you want to, have a solid lasting foundation, you have to have and that's why when you look at synastry, I mean, you kinda want some Saturnian influence there, even if it's harsh, even if it's a square or an opposition. If there's no Saturn at all, I mean, I'm wondering, like, yeah, is that actually gonna last? You know? You can I mean, notably, oppositions are between compatible signs, right?
Yeah.
Like, water and earth or fire and air. And so, it's like it's not comfortable being at absolute odds with somebody, but it can be productive, you know? And so, yeah, that idea of Saturn being nurturing when it's done properly, I agree. I think it's like very discounted. You know, people we talk a lot about, that's the other thing, like, when you talk about synastry, um, people will talk about Sun and Moon and Venus and Mars as being natural pairs,
Yeah.
but Venus, Saturn, that's what you were getting at, like, artists need to you know, if somebody asks me, like, completely blank canvas, you know, what I wanna do as an art, if they give me I I actually blank for a moment because I don't have, like, "Okay, how big's the canvas? Where's it going to be going?" Like, having a certain amount of boundaries on your creativity
Mhm.
gives a sort of, it gives a sort of scaffolding upon which to build and begin to create. Like, if you give me an absolute blank canvas, I find that harder to work with a lot of times than if I'm given very clear guidelines and like, and then boom, I can create something within those very clear guidelines easily, a lot more easily than if I'm just given complete and total freedom.
Yeah, I think that's most people. I think that's why most art is either solving a problem or dealing with, a set of restrictions or coming from a prompt. Um,
Yep.
even the idea of genre, right, is Saturn. What it made me think of this is I was just at the Mexican ballet, and right, like, so it was sort of doing this sort of grand, history of Mexico through all these
No.
beautiful costumes and rituals and music, et cetera, but, like, each of those things, right, had an order, right? Like, it came like, "This is how you do something, this is how you" like, it was so like, that was a Saturnian influence, like, it looked really beautiful and had these beautiful movements, but again, without, right, Saturn there to, like, provide the structure, there would literally be nothing.
Yeah, there wouldn't be any ballet or opera.
You
Uh,
just get those people who are like you meet those people who have, like I almost feel bad for them. They're like lack of Saturn, where they just, like they have the opportunity to do everything, and they're constantly like, "I don't know what I'm doing." Like, you know those people, right? They're like,
yeah,
"I just kinda make art," but then, like, it never really looks like anything or does anything, and they're constantly frustrated by their own lack of structure.
yep, and it's difficult. I feel really bad, and it's kinda like you wanna just, like I don't know, you wanna just, like, be like, you know, "Get your shit together, dude."
But you're 40 and it's hard.
But yeah, but they literally kind of don't have a clue, like, and that's the thing is, like, absolute freedom is, um it's actually a wasteland in some ways because, um, there's literally no friction, there's no limits, there's no responsibility, there's just, and that's why people who live life, live, you know, um, dissolute life, where they're just, like, basically partying all the time,
Yeah.
that they are not happy because there's no friction, there's no limits, there's no real challenges, you know? Um, and so, yeah, it's interesting that we ended up talking about Saturn most of all, but yeah, Saturn's gonna be in Aries for a little while, and I think most people see that and they go, "Oh," like, that's the wet blanket, that's, like, the downer,
Yeah.
the Debbie Downer that, like, makes the party not fun and yeah, yeah, whatever, but there's a lot of there's a lot of, really good energy there, really good practical energy there that, we can kind of keep an eye out for of like, okay, like I said, I think the first thing that comes to mind is like which impulses like discerning which impulses that we have that are like definitely need to follow that, but I definitely need to be nurturing in providing it structure, providing it time, providing it space. The way that I wrote my first book, I showed up every morning for 1 hour and it was the first thing every morning that I dedicated to that project. And I didn't stop until it was done. And I kind of had to make myself stop in the end because I'm sure you've been there with project like, oh, I could do that. I could do a little bit more. I could do, and at
Mhm.
some point you're just like, it's got to go or I'll never get it out there.
I love that's such a lovely piece of inspiration. An hour a day.
Yeah, just show up. But here's another thing that I learned as a counselor, like, start where people are, start where you are. So if you're
Yeah,
doing 0 hours a week or 0 hours a month, an hour a day would be very difficult to sustain. So
yeah.
start where you are. So I usually encourage people like, how much are you doing per week or month? And then like, let's just try to add another unit of whatever you're already doing. Um, and build, and then if a day a week is a couple steps beyond that, then okay, build to that, like, as your ultimate goal. But yeah, that's Saturn, that's nurturing, and that's following the impulse to create, but within an appropriate container.
Yes. I made a list of future, conversations for us. One
Good.
is Jupiter problems. The
Jupiter problems, wow.
Jupiter problems. The other is, the unique position of astrologers and contrasting, right, like, how astrologers can learn from therapists, why we're our own unique, um, profession. I am still working on that thesis, but I'll have it to share with you so we can discuss.
Awesome.
Uh, can I share my favorite? My I have one person on
Please,
my Mount Rushmore.
please.
So and I wanna share this with you because I it's funny, I don't think of that many Aries, but and I'm forgetting her exact chart, but I know she has an Aries stellium or a few planets in Aries. It's, the author Leonora or author and artist Leonora Carrington. Are
Oh,
you familiar with
wow.
her?
I did not
Yeah.
realize that. I know that Marlena, Bremner. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with her work?
Mhm, mhm.
She talks about Leonora Carrington quite a bit she was an artist, right?
So, I'll tell you her quick story, and I think this is why it's so interesting. She, as a very young girl, she came from an affluent family, I believe in England, and then, um, ran away to Paris. Um, what's his name? I can't remember. One of the famous, oh my god, his blank it doesn't matter. His name's eluding right now, but she was part of the sort of early modernists, surrealists.
Yeah, she ran off with another artist or something, an older guy.
Exactly. Yes, and I can't remember his name right now. It's
Yeah.
'cause he doesn't whatever, he's small potatoes. Anyway, so she ran away. He gets taken away, sort of World War II, right? They're like
Yeah.
he'd taken him off, and then she's still living at their house, I think in the south of France. Again, you're getting the very crude version of this, and what's her friends are like, "We need to go to Spain." So they take her to Spain. When she's in Spain, she, like, out of nowhere has this sort of, like, mental breakdown, like, this psychotic flip, gets put into a mental hospital, and she ended up writing this whole anyways, put that aside there. Eventually ends up in Mexico, becomes this very famous, like, Mexican surrealist artist, like,
Mhm.
international, living in Mexico, and just lived to be, like, in her 90s, really incredible artist. But
Mhm.
she went back and she has, she's her body of work is huge. It's paintings, it's sculpture, it's, short stories, but she wrote this memoir about her time in the mental institute, right?
Wow.
It turns out the doctor later apologized to her because he ended up giving these meds, like, he's like, "You were fine, you just had some sort of psychotic break," and they were giving her these meds that, like, made it worse.
Ugh.
Anyway, I can't remember the name of the book right now, it's, like, down below, you can look it up. But
Mhm.
what's so fascinating about that book is she talks about, right, like, being in this mental hospital, having this psychotic break, and, like, you know, being heavily induced on these, on these drugs. And what to me was so fascinating about the book is she never loses her sense of self. She somehow figures out how to navigate that to escape. It's incredible because so many women, right, during that time especially, got put away in mental institutes and never came out. And she, like, is able to navigate this. And when I went to look at her
Those are
chart,
those Aries survival instincts, man.
yeah, like, I was expecting, because her work is so surreal, and I was expecting, oh,
Neptune,
Pisces.
Pisces, yeah, yeah.
No, no, it is Aries, and I was like, "Oh my god," it's that Aries impulse of self-preservation
But
that's,
that
like,
brings us full
incredible.
circle, Viv, you know why?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
remember when I was talking about Dane Rudhyard, the day force and the night force? And that
Yes.
Aries is trying to outrun that night force, but they're about equal. So that night force is what you're talking about, like the Pisces, the night
Mhm.
force is still more. And in
Yeah.
Aries, the day force is just becoming more than the night force, but that night force, the Aries impulse is to try to individuate out of that collective consciousness that
Mhm.
which fe which to be pulled back in feels like madness. So that you're right, that's a very prototypical Aries journey, and I hadn't realized that. I do remember reading Marlena used her as an example in her book,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
remember, thinking that, in terms of surrealism and stuff, in terms of the alchemy and stuff, that it was a vivid example. But no, that's absolutely prototypically Aries, so thank you. That's very cool.
You're you're welcome. I
Appreciate
love
it.
that his name is, like, he's so, so famous, I can imagine his paintings, but I like
He's
like,
not an
he's just, like,
Aries.
erased.
Doesn't matter.
He's erased from my memory. He doesn't matter. This was so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I hope that we get to, cross some more items off your list at some point.
I do too, and I will have new internet by then, I hope.
Alright, sounds good. Alright,
Okay,
so we calling it a
bye.
wrap then?
I think so.
Alright.
Yeah, we should say, what's going on? I'm, like, acting like podcast host. I'm like, "Where can people find you?" They're on your Substack, but, like, what do you have going on these days?
Yes, what's going on out there in LA, Viv?
Well, I have a monthly I'm like, "What do I do?" "Oh, yeah, I host a monthly astrology salon." I do that in person. The next one, if you're in Los Angeles, is this Tuesday at the Philosophical Research Society, and my guest host is William Kiesel from Ouroboros Press and
Well,
22 Teachings, and he's talking about alchemy, sort of the sun and the moon through alchemy as our,
Oh my
which
god, I
you
wish I was closer, dude.
I
Oh
know,
my
I
god.
wish you were
I
closer to
know
come,
it's
like,
a
speak.
I know it's a plane trip and everything, but it's a long plane ride.
If you ever get to LA, I'd love to have you speak. Um,
Definitely.
I think we're gonna record this one. He's great. Are you for some reason, I feel like you guys would be, like, natural friends.
I think I know who you're talking about, and I know that press, but I don't
Yeah.
think we've ever met, actually. Yeah. But that's very
He
cool. That talk sounds like it's right up my alley.
I think so too, and I'll just say that both you and him are 2 of the people that make alchemy approachable to me.
Nice.
Sometimes you talk alchemy and you lose me. It can it's y y but if you have the right
Philosophical.
person, it's opens up a whole new world, and it's incredible.
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah, right on. I love that you're doing that. That's great.
yeah, and
Mm,
then, of course, we have, the festival, we have the Astrofest in June, um,
nice.
but you can't go anywhere because you're gonna be at your, UAC?
Well,
Is it the
UAC is in September,
okay.
so, June's a possibility.
If you wanna make it up if you make it to LA, we will build a slot
Alright.
for you.
Alright. It's my first hearing about that, so we'll have a conversation about it. Um, and you do something which I think is really cool for your Substack people, um, you call it office hour.
Office hours, yeah. So, again, that is our 3rd conversation is astro teaching. How do you create containers? Because for me, like, big bloated classes, I just can't. So,
Yeah,
if you're a member of my Substack, a paid member, we do office hours. So, essentially, we just hop on twice a month, and we look at charts together, and we talk about astrology,
nice.
and that's secret here, that's how I learn. I get better every time I look at a chart with anyone.
They
That's
say you
that's the
teach
secret
best
here.
what you most need to learn.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, teaching and learning are kind of the same thing. Right on. That's
Oh, yeah, I
awesome.
mean, I'm sure it's like that for you, right? You're like, "I have to teach something." You're like, "Oh, let me go back and make sure I really know it." Like, I know it, I have to really know it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's always like that's always like shoring up like that idea when I decided to shore up that weakness of, with the counseling, um, that's fundamental, like shoring up of the that goes back to like Maslow's hierarchy of like having a
Mhm.
really solid foundation before you build to the next level and the next level and the next level. Yeah, absolutely. That's why um this is a lifelong journey of learning, you know? You never s I and I'm just fundamentally curious, man, so it suits me perfectly, you know? Um, but yeah, on my end,
Yeah.
I've got some interesting stuff that I'm doing with the decans where I'm,
Okay.
exploring the different decans. I'm not exactly doing a decan walk, but I'm working with the different decans as the planetary rulers arrive in them. So we just got
Mhm.
done exploring the 3rd decan of Aries, which is Venus's territory. Um, and I'm gonna be looking at, later in the summer, we're gonna have a huge run of Jupiter in the 2nd decan of Leo that I'm really looking forward to, and so I'm gonna be doing some teachings. I'm gonna be doing a few talks on that and doing some teachings on that, so I'm kind of on a decan trip this year a little bit. And then, as you mentioned, in September, I'll be at UAC and book 2 of my triptycho on Mercury's phases. Solar phases will be released there at UAC. So,
I'm so excited about
oh my
that.
God, it's like, it's not close enough for me to get too excited because I'm like, I'll get neurotic if I get too excited and I can't actually do anything about it yet. So I'm cautiously, how they say you're cautiously optimistic? I'm cautiously excited.
Gosh, but the book is, like, uh, gone to the publisher already,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You're not in the phase
It's
where
in
you
the
okay,
publisher's hands as of, I gave him a full year, before. So I was working on the book last summer. Um, and it was a crazy experience because each time there was a delay, it turns out when I got back to the work, I realized I find myself saying things I wouldn't have said if I hadn't had the experience that the delay brought.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's really ripe. This book is really ripe. It was definitely ready to come out, and I'm really proud of it, and I can't wait to share it with people. So, um,
Y
cautiously, uh, cautiously excited about September.
Also, isn't that the big Mercury lesson? You're like, "Oh, I was delayed and I learned from the delay." That of course, that's gonna happen when you're writing a book on
Yeah,
Mercury.
and realizing that you learned from the delay, you know? Sometimes my whole thing about the first book is like, "Hey, delays can be learning experiences, like,
Mhm.
let's map how you do that."
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes it just happens and you didn't even realize it, and that's what I've found happening to me during the process of the second one, like, "Oh, wow, I really did learn something, and now it's coming out, and I'm kinda glad I had that delay because I wouldn't have said this particular thing without it." And, like, maybe I should learn to trust, I guess that's Saturn, right? Maybe I should learn to trust Saturn a little bit more and not get, like, all Aries frustrated and like, "Rawr, think I'm proud, pack, ah."
That's how you usually act in your office.
Yeah, that's the mild form. This desk is pretty cool. My other desk, I literally had, like, a place where I took a screwdriver and was like, "Arr, arr, arr, arr." And I'm like, "I should really cover that up." It's kind of embarrassing, but I just graduated to another desk eventually. Alright, that's probably the place to call it. Thanks, Viv. It's always fun talking to you.
Oh my god, same. Have a gorgeous day. Bye.
Okay, bye. Thanks, everybody. Good to see y'all.